Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Workforce Wednesday in the Kentucky Chamber Workforce Center's Bus to Business virtual program series. My name is Harper Smith, and I'm the Senior Manager of the Workforce Center, and I help direct the Bus to Business program. Before we begin today, I want to thank our sponsors in this effort, Kentucky Sherman AT&T, for helping bring classrooms to careers, and also I would like to thank the team at Ulimi for their virtual event platform. This session is being recorded as well as live streamed to Facebook and YouTube and will be available to rewatch and share afterwards. So whether you're one of the 200 students tuning in live with us on April 14th or watching at a later date, thank you so much for joining, and we hope you learned something new. Today, we will be hearing from Zach Miller, Senior Corporate Recruiter at AppHarvest. Our Equine Talent Pipeline Project Manager, Lori Mays, will be watching the chat and will lead a Q&A session at the end. So please put any questions you have for Zach in the chat, and we will make sure those get asked. I will kick it over to Zach Miller now. Hey, Zach.
Awesome. Thanks, Harper. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to share a little bit about AppHarvest today. Let me share my screen here real quick. Look at my slides up. Harper, can you see that?
Yep, looks good.
All right, great. All right, we still good?
Yep, you're ready to go.
Great. Well, hello, everybody. Like Harper said, my name is Zach Miller. I am the Senior Corporate Recruiter here at AppHarvest. So we are headquartered in Moorhead, Kentucky, with our corporate office sitting in Lexington, Kentucky. So that's where I sit out of. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about AppHarvest this morning in general and go over kind of what we do and how we do it. Give you a little bit of introduction into myself and my role within the organization. Talk a little bit about how we farm smarter. And also a little bit about our BCorp certification. Makes us a little bit unique as an organization, so it's a lot of fun to share kind of what that is and why we do that. Talk a little bit about where we are currently, about our Moorhead farm, as well as where we are growing. We're adding to our additional locations, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We have a strong community outreach and education portion of the business, and so we'll speak a little bit about some of the programs we have there in conjunction with our AgTech and container farms, and then I'll share a little bit of time for some Q&A. So if there are questions during the live chat, I'd be happy to field those as we go. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So AppHarvest as an organization is mission driven to build a resilient food system right here in America, right here in Central Appalachia. So like I said, we are headquartered in Moorhead, so in Rowan County. So you can see a beautiful picture of the sun coming up on our farm in Moorhead. So we'll talk a little bit further about how that is structured, but that is our first farm that we have fully completed. So it is 60 acres of what is referred to as controlled environment agriculture. So it's 100% climate controlled. So we'll talk a little bit about here in a few what that looks like. So grown in Appalachia for America. One of the reasons we are based here is because a lot of us are from here, but furthermore, we can get to about 70% of the US population within a 1 day's drive of where we sit. So our fruits and vegetables are coming right out of our farm as a no-wash facility, put on trucks and sent right to grocery stores. We've got a strategic partnership with a lot of the grocery stores in the surrounding area. So if you go to your Kroger's or Meijer's of the world, odds are you're going to see AppHarvest tomatoes showing up. So it's pretty cool to be based right here in Central Appalachia and be able to distribute fresh fruit and produce right to the region. And we're going to continue to expand as we grow. So we're building a sustainable network to increase the food supply and access for all. So we're addressing the food insecurity as the population grows in the world, the need and necessity to produce more fruit and vegetables and fresh produce is ever present. And so as we continue to think about ways to address that, we're going to do so in a very responsible and accessible manner, like I said, right here based in Central Kentucky. So a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, I am our Senior Corporate Recruiter here. So I mostly focus on our corporate talent acquisition. So as a sort of mid-stage startup, we are in hyper growth mode. So I'm focused on building out our corporate structure here, like I said, in Lexington, but do pinch hit and help out the team in Moorhead and continue to build out the organization as we expand. So I joined back in 2020, tail part of November, like I said, to help lead corporate recruiting. originally from Northwest Ohio, so I'll be the first to say I'm not a Kentucky native, but I've been adopted. So I graduated from the University of Kentucky and have been focused my entire career on recruiting and talent acquisition. So I started my initial professional career in what's referred to as the recruitment process and outsourcing world, or you have it referred to as the RPO. So mostly partnered with large Fortune 500 organizations and working on their corporate talent acquisition and recruiting. I moved over at the tail end of 2018, early part of 2019, to another organization here in Lexington called Galls. Some of y'all may be familiar with that. So I worked there for just shy of 2 years before moving over to AppHarvest at the tail end of last year. And as I mentioned, worked for about 9 years prior with ADP and doing client partnered talent acquisition. I genuinely love recruiting and talent acquisition. I've been doing it my entire career, whether that's connecting early career talent, either high school students, college students, whatever it may be, to our organization. I run our internship program here at AppHarvest, so it's a lot of fun to be able to bring new people into the company and really partner with a lot of different organizations around the area to be able to do so. And then lastly, I'm a tomato lover. So one of the perks here of AppHarvest is we produce a lot of tomatoes and we get to bring some of those home. And so whether that's our TOVs or our beefsteaks, slice them up, and I love all tomatoes. So it's good to be able to work here. So we call ourselves farmers and futurists. So we farm smarter. So the picture that you saw a little bit earlier, like I said, is our farm in Moorhead. Looks a little bit different than some of the agricultural facilities you may be familiar with. And a lot of the reasons that we're doing so is we can be much more sustainably focused and we can do things more efficiently to be able to produce the food necessary to be able to feed the future. So to do so, we need to be a little bit smarter how we address that. So, and I'll talk a little bit here in a second about how the farm's set up, but we use 90% less water. We have a retention pond that runs alongside the facility. So we harvest all of the rainwater that falls on our roofs, and thus we use almost 100% recycled rainwater in our facility. So we don't have agricultural runoff. We don't have to tap into the watershed as much as others. And so we can be much more efficient as we think about water usage. So when we think about water leaving the facility, it's only going out by the tomatoes themselves. And you know, a tomato is about 90% water as it is. So the water that we're putting into the facility is coming out by way of tomatoes and not running off into our water streams. And we can also do so year round. So we can farm 365 days a year, 24/7. You'll see that picture in the right-hand corner has got a kind of ambient glow, kind of a pinkish orangish glow to it. It was the largest LED installation in the world, and so we can farm 24/7 if we want to. The plants do like to have a little bit of rest time, so we don't necessarily keep them on all the time, but we have the ability to have a climate-resilient food supply because of the way the facility is structured. 60 acres under glass, and it's protected from the elements, and we're controlling the entire environment within there. We also don't use any harsh chemical pesticides. That picture there's got a little bee on there. So like I said, I've been doing talent acquisition recruiting for a long time, and this is the first place I've worked where I've had to ask people if they're allergic to bees in the interview process, because we do have live bees to pollinate the plants within the facility. So if you ever get the chance to walk through the facility, you'll see some live bees flying around. They help keep our plants pretty healthy. And then the reason that we're doing this is because we can get about 30 times the yield than your traditional open field agriculture because our 60 acres indoor is a little bit different setup than your traditional field farming. So we grow, it's referred to as hydroponic vertical farming. So if you've ever grown a tomato plant, or if you've ever grown up on a farm and you've had any tomato plants, you might get 6-7 feet tall in a good year. Our tomato plants could be in excess of 20 feet tall because we grow vertically and thus are able to get about, like I said, 30 times more the yield than your traditional open field agriculture. We're also a B corporation, so I talked a little bit about that at the beginning, and it's not B as in the bumblebees, but a certified B corporation. We're also a public benefit corporation. What that basically means is we put purpose above profit. So we're always going to be thinking about ways that we can impact the community and a global movement, as opposed to always just looking at the bottom line and how we can maximize profit. We're trying to do things together and do things the right way. So B corporations, there's about 3,500 in about 70 countries. There's a decent amount that are focused on food as we kind of think about creating a sustainable food network for the future, there's lots of companies that are mission driven and trying to create a sustainable focused food system. So there's a couple different pillars as to why you would be certified for a B Corporation. So at AppHarvest, we talk a lot about our values and our mission. And so to maintain that mission, to keep that focus, that singular drive on the mission is a big piece to that. A competitive advantage, it does give us a little bit of a leg up on the competition. We can talk to sort of the why of how we do things a little bit differently than, say, some of the mega producers. It's also a way to improve performance, gives us sort of a carrot to always be striving for. And also, from a purely talent acquisition standpoint, selfishly focused on recruiting and talent acquisition, it makes us, kind of have a little bit of a different angle than some of the organizations. And then, like I mentioned, the global movement aspect, there's lots of companies that are doing things the right way, and we want to be rewarded to be able to speak to that. And the last piece is obviously, raising capital helps get some visibility to different types of investors and different types of capital-driven organizations. So that's certainly a piece to it, especially now as AppHarvest is a publicly traded organization, gives us sort of a different lens to the investment community. And the B Corporation community is good company to keep. So as you can see on this slide, a lot of these you may be familiar with, your Patagonias and Ben & Jerry's and different organizations of the world. These are similar peers to us in terms of a B Corporation certification. So it's certainly a good company to keep, and lots of these organizations are again, mission driven and singularly focused in their own verticals. Like I said, a lot of these being food and ag production, trying to create a healthy ecosystem for food supply. Let's talk a little bit about our Moorhead farm. So going back to this picture of the actual facility, so like I said, it's about 60 acres of controlled environment agriculture. So on the right-hand side of the screen, that is our east greenhouse. So we're growing beefsteak tomatoes in there. So that's your kind of traditional slicer, baseball-sized tomato. Again, those are being harvested and produced as we speak. So you can go to your local grocery stores around the area and pick some of those up. And then on the left-hand side of the screen is our west greenhouse. So these are equal 30-acre size facilities. That'll be our tomatoes on the vine, or you'll hear it referred to as TOV. So when you go to the grocery store and you see those, 3 or 4 tomatoes still hanging on the vine, that's what we're growing there. So just recently, within the last week or two, have started harvesting on that side and started distributing. So those will be showing up on grocery store shelves here in the very near term. And as you can see, it's about 720,000 tomato plants within that facility, broken out in 50-50 on each side, again, using 90% less water. On the far upper right-hand corner of the screen there, that kind of big white area, that is the retention pond. So I mentioned that earlier. It's about 10 acres that all the rainwater is harvested in. Thus, we can do the 90% less water and be much more efficient in terms of a closed loop system for irrigation. And at full capacity, the facility in Moorhead will be a little over 300 people. Right now, we're about 350 strong in Moorhead. So if you think about Moorhead, it's a town of 7,000 people or so. So being able to provide good paying, high quality jobs in an area that, let's be honest, needs it. And so we're happy to be able to provide opportunities within the area and within the region for employment and be able to give people a living wage and earn an honest living right there in Moorhead. So we first started planning. We spent most of last year constructing the facility and was completed the tail end of September or so, and first plants went in at the end of October, and then we just recently, beginning of this year, started harvesting. So the facility there in Moorhead is at full capacity and full production and producing tomatoes as we speak. And in conjunction with the Moorhead facility, we just recently broke ground on 2 additional locations. So the left-hand side of the screen is the future site of our Richmond location. So we broke ground in October of 2020. It'll be effectively a replica of our Moorhead facility. One of the nice things as we are growing, we're building new facilities and we can always optimize efficiency, make sure that we're tweaking things and doing things the right way as we continue to grow. So it may be a little bit different of a setup, but it'll be 60 acres of growing area. As we continue to expand, we know we're going to expand into different product categories. So like I said, we started in Moorhead with tomatoes, and then we'll continue to expand the product category. So any sort of kind of viney crop lends itself really well to the way that we do agriculture. So again, the vertical farming. So whether that's doing some tomatoes down in Richmond or cucumbers, bell peppers, anything along those lines, we'll continue to expand our product category as we grow. So we'll see what Richmond ultimately looks like. We haven't quite landed on that, but we'll eventually be expanding the product category. And in conjunction with expanding the product category, our Berea facility also broke ground tail end of October 2020. It'll be a little bit smaller of a facility. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that location. It'll be about 15 acres once it's fully constructed of growing area. And then we're going to be doing our leafy greens down there. So as you can see on the screen there, a vast majority of the U.S. Leafy greens production is done in areas that don't get the significant rainfall that we do here. As such, it makes it a little bit more difficult to actually be able to produce the lettuces and the leafy greens. So the Berea will be our leafy green location. So salad greens, lettuces, spinach, anything along those lines are the types of crops that we'll be growing down there. And then going to continue to expand the product portfolio. And people often ask why we started with tomatoes in Moorhead, and one of the reasons is, on average, the U.S. consumes about 5 billion pounds of tomatoes, and about 4 billion of which is imported from outside of the United States, either Mexico or South America. So that little portion that is produced in the United States is done again in California and Arizona and areas where they don't get the significant rainfall here. So for us to be able to step in and produce a significant amount of tomatoes, it's one of the most consumed fruits and vegetables in the United States. And even at full capacity in Moorhead, we can produce about 45 million pounds of tomatoes. So we have a huge disparity in fruit production that we can really make up a lot of ground by doing so at scale, right? So we're building 60-acre facilities, so each one of those continues to scale and improve on the other. So we can really impact that production disparity pretty quickly. All right, and so I mentioned earlier about our tether to the community and some of our outreach programs as it relates to community partnerships and also the education component that what we do. So our focus outside of just producing tomatoes is to really build the AgTech capital as we think about the confluence of agriculture and technology right here in Central Appalachia and specifically here in Kentucky. And so that's a number of different kind of functional areas that we're trying to address, but improve access to fresh, nutritious fruits and vegetables, and really improve the security of our sustainable farming network and really advance that in Central Appalachia and build just a homegrown food supply network right here. And then also, the key piece on that last bullet there is increase the investment in Appalachia. As I mentioned, Jonathan Webb, our founder and CEO, is born and raised in Eastern Kentucky, and a lot of our folks here organizationally can say the same. And so really improving and increasing the livelihoods of folks here in Kentucky and in Appalachia is one of the strategic pillars of why we're doing what we're doing. So I mentioned adding 300 good paying jobs in Moorhead. The same can be said as we grow into Richmond. Berea will be a little bit smaller, but again, additional jobs and ability to grow with the organization down in Berea. And then as we continue to expand, we'll see even more of that. So that the anticipation is by the end of 2025, we'll have about a dozen operational greenhouses throughout Central Appalachia. So really tethering that investment to the area is extremely important to us. So kind of how we do that, we've got a few different educational programs and some different community partners. So we're trying to make the marriage of traditional farming and traditional agriculture with that key technological piece and really improving the way that we can do farming and the way that we can think about sort of modern agriculture. So we are investing in this next generation of Eastern Kentuckians and Central Appalachians to be able to come into a high-tech agricultural workspace and an investment in this type of agriculture. And the education programs really help define that and set apart the region as we think about building the AgTech community right here at home. So this slide just kind of paints a picture of some of the community and education partners that we have. I'm not going to go through each of them, but you can kind of see some of the partnerships that we have, either the Department of Ag or FFA. So I'm sure some of you all are probably involved in that, but it goes even further than that with some of our community education partnerships working with, we're a second chance employer. So we work with like addiction recovery networks, with the Education Development Center, with Goodwill and different networks such as that. So one of the kind of cool things about the entire organization is from the beginning, our community and education partnerships have been one of the strategic pillars to how we've built the organization. So we have a really, really good network of folks within the area and within Kentucky to be able to lean on as we think about growing the AgTech community right here in Kentucky. And as we continue to expand, that network will only get broader and larger as we grow into different areas and different surrounding states as we continue to build, some of those additional facilities. Outside of the community and the partnerships that we have with some of the networks there, we're also very specific with some of our college partnerships. So we have a few sort of strategic education partners from a higher education institution standpoint. So obviously being based in Moorhead, we have a really great partnership with Moorhead State. And then I mentioned our corporate office being here in Lexington, so obviously a good partnership with UK. And then Jonathan is a Pikeville native, so we have good relationships with UPike and Eastern as we're growing in Berea and Eastern Kentucky down in Richmond as well. So and the KCTCS system is a huge network for us to be able to continue to expand different partnerships with them. Maysville sits right next to the farm in Moorhead, so we have a good partnership with that education partner. And we're always, continuing to expand the reach that we have with our community and education partners. For example, I run, as mentioned earlier, our internship program. So this summer will actually be our first kind of flagship inaugural run as a summer intern program as we've continued to grow and expand. So we'll have about a dozen or so interns from some of these strategic partners, as well as some other colleges around the area that will be brought in for our first kind of summer internship program. So we're excited to continue to expand that and continue to grow with the program there. And then as we continue to expand, we're going to be looking at different vocational programs and co-op opportunities and different things like that with our education partners and with our community partners. So realistically, these handful on the screen are just the beginning that we have the foundational laid. And as we continue to grow, we'll continue to expand that network as well. And one of the other kind of key pieces to our education partnerships is our high school AgTech program. So this is a pretty cool program, and it's very unique to us as an organization and very unique within the AgTech world. So there's not a lot of folks that are doing what we're doing. So us to be a leader in that industry is really exciting, and to do so right here at home is even further. So this is really the marriage of kind of your traditional classroom curriculum with hands-on experience. So essentially what these are, they're high-tech, again, controlled environment, hydroponic vertical systems. They're retrofitted shipping containers. So if you've ever passed on the interstate or on a rail car, those 40-foot long shipping containers or so, that's what we're retrofitting to do controlled environment agriculture in. So it's pretty neat to be able to see those facilities that are super advanced technology that we're putting on site at local school districts and local areas to run our AgTech program. So not only does that give students hands-on experience complementing the classroom-based AgTech work that we do, but it also provides the local districts with fresh produce and vegetables that in real time are being served in the schools. So some of y'all may have heard of this, or some of you may be involved, which is even cooler, but it's actually a 6-unit curriculum that actually introduces the scientific, economic, and social aspects of AgTech as we think about growing that specific industry right here in Central Appalachia, partnering with a lot of different schools to be able to deploy that, and then continue to develop that and grow that program as we continue to expand. So right now there's 3 functioning ones. There's Breathitt County, Shelby Valley, and Rowan County, and just this fall should have Rockcastle County off and running as well. And then we have a 5th location that is to be determined just yet, but we'll eventually have a 5th one as well. So that program is going to continue to expand, continue to grow. So we have 3 that are functioning right now, and then going to continue to grow that as we continue to expand. So it's a really unique partnership, and one that affords students a really cool opportunity to be able to not only learn, but also get hands-on real life experience within the sector. And if folks come to work for AppHarvest, great. But if they go on to build their own container farms or go on to major in horticulture or whatever it may be, that's the focus, is to continue to expand an entire industry right here at home. All right, let's do a little trivia. I don't have the chat, so Harper or Laura, you guys are gonna have to help me out with some of our answers if that's cool. But if you were to guess how many football fields, including the end zones, can you fit inside the greenhouse? What would be your guess? Okay, well, I'm just going to give the answer because I don't have any responses yet. But so it's actually 45. So if you took the entire facility and spread it out over football fields, the greenhouse would actually fit 45 football fields within the 60-acre facility to have. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of perspective on how massive the facility is. I didn't grow up on a farm, so I didn't know what 60 acres looked like. But when I got into the facility and saw it for the first time, it was really kind of eye-opening, that the sheer size and scale of it, in terms of the land reach that we have, but also just the enormity of the entire structure. And how many varieties of tomatoes exist? Again, I don't know that I'm able to do trivia the way that I thought I could, so I'm just going to kind of come out with the answers. But it's actually 10,000 different varieties of tomatoes. So in the facility in Moorhead, we're growing 2. But there's a whole lot more that can be grown, and they range anywhere in size, shape, color, lots of different varieties. So like I said, we have the beefsteak growing in the east greenhouse, and the tomato on the vine is actually a similar type picture to the one you're looking at on the screen here. So about 10,000 different varieties. And the $1 million question, are tomatoes considered a fruit or a vegetable? So this is a bit of a hot button topic for a lot of folks. But it's scientifically a fruit, even though you may hear it referred to as a vegetable, but has a lot to do with the different seed makeup within the fruit itself. So the tomatoes are actually considered fruits. When we talk about fruits and vegetables, we'll be growing the tomatoes as a fruit in Moorhead.
We had some people get that one correct, Zach.
Right, good. All right, cool. So I'm going to open up to some Q&A. Do folks have some questions for me?
Yeah, so I've been watching the chat, so I'm just going to go through a couple that have kind of popped up during your presentation, and then Harper and I have been curious about some things too that we'll ask. So first of all, one of the things that people have asked is, where can the general public find your produce? So if they want to go buy tomatoes right now that are produced by AppHarvest, where do they go?
Yeah, very good question. So we have a master distributor that we work through, that we actually have about partnerships with 20 or so of the top 25 national grocery retailers. So anywhere from Kroger to Meijer to Whole Foods, Costco, et cetera, we are producing and distributing our tomatoes to. So here in central Kentucky, if you go to your Kroger's or your Meijers, they should have them, Walmart's as well. So we're trying to get as many out the door as possible. So I know my wife and I were at Kroger the other day and got to see the AppHarvest tomatoes, which the first time that I saw that was kind of geeking out and taking lots of pictures, and got some weird looks why this guy was taking pictures of tomatoes in the grocery store. But so it actually, you'll see there's a little sticker, the PLU on the tomatoes has a Sunset Brands logo, and then it's got the AppHarvest little mountain logo as well. So if you go to your Kroger's, Meijers of the world, Walmart's here around the area, you should see them on the grocery store shelves.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep an eye out for them. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you guys, can you explain a little bit and then whether you produce organic options?
Right now, we don't refer to them as organic. They are non-GMO. We don't use any of the harsh pesticides or chemicals, but they're not technically organic, just because we do use some different fertilizers and things like that. But we don't refer to them as organic, but they are non-GMO, and we don't use the traditional kind of chemicals and pesticides that you would see in your traditional kind of open field agriculture.
Okay. And then question about your bees. Do you guys work with local apiaries or other organizations to do bee sharing and things like that? Or do you have a whole separate kind of entity within AppHarvest that works with your bees and how that works within your produce?
Yeah, we actually have a whole separate kind of a subdivision within the organization, integrated pest management. So we have the entire focus area of the organization that focuses specifically on that, not only keeping the bees happy. It's interesting. You can't really see it in the picture that we're looking at here, but there's sort of kind of boxes and kind of houses within the every so many rows that act as our, beehives and like. So we have an entire kind of subset within the greenhouse operations that manages that. And then we also have a couple different varieties of insects within the greenhouse proper. So not only the bumblebees that we use as pollination methods, but we also have a kind of unique variety of a wasp. So it's a white wasp that is actually, it eats kind of bad pests, if you will. So different flies and different varieties that can be negative pests to the plants. We have a different wasp that is not harmful. It's a non-stinging wasp, but it does eat the bad pests. And so you can see in this image that we're looking at, that kind of yellow strip that runs kind of horizontally the length of those rows. Those are actually bug strips. So if you've ever driven past the facility, or if you're ever out near Moorhead on a either evening or morning, you kind of see an orangish glow off in the distance from the light. That's the yellow strips that are emitting that. So we've got a few different methods for kind of insect and pest management, but it's done in-house.
That's really interesting that you say that. I know of a couple other instances in agriculture where they use, I'm not sure if they're the exact same type of wasp, but that same type of pest control using pests, which is, what we would consider pests. So that's really neat that you guys use those as well. So moving more into the kind of questions about careers and things like that. An interesting personal question for you. So oftentimes middle school and high school, they're just starting out and kind of what they want to do in their careers and for future education, et cetera. And they have a hard time seeing farther down their career. So what was your first job ever? How did you get started in life after school?
So my first job ever, I hesitate to say this on video, but my father ran a restaurant in Northwest Ohio where I'm from. So I started in restaurants, probably violating some child labor laws. But that was my first job. And I always tell people from a recruiting and talent acquisition kind of lens, when I think about like my career and where I got to where I am, I think that my advice would be to try many, many different things, whether you're in middle school, high school, college, whatever it may be. Experiment, go to different types of careers, work in different environments to see, what makes you happy and what you want to do. I worked in restaurants, I worked in retail, I worked in sales. I did a couple of different things before I ultimately landed on where I am now. And I think that sort of set me up for things I like to do, but at the same time, and I guess more importantly, things I didn't like to do. So I wasn't a big salesperson. I didn't like working in retail. And ultimately, I did some internships in college that really sort of opened my eyes to what I wanted to do. And then was lucky enough when I graduated from college to kind of fall into the recruiting world and then kind of fell in love and took it from there. But my advice to folks, like I said, regardless of age or class or whatever it is, to try different things and see what you like to do, and get many exposures to many different things, and ultimately that'll make your decision making in terms of your career trajectory a little bit easier.
That's great advice. So we've got a couple more popping up in the chat along the same lines. So as new high school graduates, are they encouraged to apply for jobs at AppHarvest? And if so, what do kind of entry-level positions look like for those that may not have any experience but have an interest, or have experience just at the high school level for a career at a facility like AppHarvest?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So yes, I would encourage anybody interested in, specifically either on the corporate side or the greenhouse side, to apply to positions that we have posted. All of our jobs are posted on our website. So in Moorhead, like I said, we've got about 300 or so folks, just using kind of round numbers there. And realistically, it's broken into two main functional areas as they kind of think about like an entry-level type career. The crop care specialist is sort of the biggest bulk of that. And so, we're looking at a picture here of the actual greenhouse and the rows there. So you can see the tomato plants. The crop care specialists are the folks that are actually tending to the crops. They're what we refer to as suckering the plants or pruning the plants. So as they continue to grow vertically, making sure that they're pruned and appropriate, and also as they get to maturity, they're the ones actually harvesting and picking the tomatoes as well. And then we also have what we refer to as our pack house, which I can back up the slide, but there's that kind of black building in the middle. Everything kind of funnels into the pack house, and that's where we're distributing the tomatoes. So it's a little bit more of kind of a production line or kind of a manufacturing type facility where we're actually boxing up the packaged tomatoes and shipping them out. So those are kind of the two main kind of functional roles as it relates to sort of a high school graduate or a recent high school graduate, or, there's lots of different sort of methodologies to get into the organization. But as we continue to grow, we've seen just in a short amount of time, lots of people promoted to supervisors or team leads or managers even, and continue to expand from there. And as we grow, we have Moorhead that's fully operational, but eventually we'll have Richmond. And so the hope and anticipation is that we can, bring somebody over from Moorhead that's cross-trained and help, bring more Richmond and Berea online. So as we think about sort of the career trajectory within AppHarvest, realistically, we're just beginning. And so what we've only been really in the facility for, 6 or 7 months now. And so the opportunities for advancement and growth are ample here. And so I think really getting it sort of at the ground level and kind of boots on the ground there in the facility would be a great opportunity for anybody to come in, learn the organization, and then be able to be promoted within.
And your job's about to get real busy when these two other facilities come online, because you're going to be hiring a bunch of people, aren't you?
Yes. So I'm lucky in that I have a partner in crime by the name of Patrick Bryant, who's mostly focused on the greenhouse kind of high volume hiring. So we've been all very busy. So we spent most of December, January, and parts of February in Moorhead 1 to 2 days a week doing massive interview days and meeting with 30, 40 people a day, which is a lot of fun because you hear lots of different stories. One of the interesting things as I think about us as an organization, there's very few people within the kind of area that have, specific AgTech or, specific horticulture, hydroponic farming type experience. So we're all sort of learning this together. And so to be able to meet with different folks, whether their background was in the tobacco industry or the coal industry or worked in manufacturing, we've brought in all sorts of different types of industry experience and different backgrounds. So it's been a lot of fun to be on the recruiting side to see how we built. But yes, Patrick and myself will be very busy here tail end of this year and early part of next year as we staff up the Richmond and Berea facility. So, but it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so kind of talking about your outreach into high schools particularly, how does a high school get involved in the AgTech program? If they wanted to have one of the containers there, did they just reach out to AppHarvest, or how did they go about that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So we have a whole community team. So Ramel Bradley and Amy Samples are kind of the two main contacts there from a community outreach programs and specifically run our AgTech curriculum and our AgTech container farms. So Amy Samples is a great person to contact. Ramel Bradley, the same. So everybody's listed on our website kind of as under our contact pages. But if anybody has specific questions as far as getting in touch with folks, I'd be happy to sync up after the call or put you in the right direction. But yes, the community team organizationally would be the best folks to reach out to, Amy and Ramel being the two main contacts on the community side that run the container farm and the AgTech program.
Okay. Would they be good contacts as well for kind of like guest speaking, whether it be in person or virtually, and or some facility or high school or any type of classroom environment wanted to come take a tour? I'm not sure what your protocol is right now during COVID, but look into the future, how these schools can come to your facility and learn more about your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. On the kind of tours piece, that's one of the things that we are really hoping as COVID starts to hopefully go away in the near term, that we can open it up a little bit more externally. We're a little bit, I don't want to say protective, it's not the right word, cognizant of bringing a lot of folks into the facility because we not only have to abide by CDC 6-foot regulations and lots of different things as it relates to COVID protocols, but we're also a food facility, and so we have to abide by the FDA and make sure that we're not bringing any external bacteria. And so we just have to be kind of cognizant of that as we think about tours and things. But eventually the hope and anticipation is that we can, as we come out of this, bring folks in, whether that's, community partners or education partners or, different schools, so we can come out and see the facility. So yes, that's my long-winded way of saying eventually we hope that we can do so and people can come in and see the facility. It's quite literally an eye-opening facility. It's awesome to be able to come in and see. So that's the hope and anticipation. Right now, it's a little bit unique of a situation, but we'll eventually expand into that. But yes, Amy and Ramel, anybody on the operations team's a good contact to be able to reach out to be able to coordinate that.
Perfect. Thanks. So one other kind of general question. What is a fun fact, both about your position and or a position within AppHarvest that people may not know about? So something maybe kind of off the wall with your position that you enjoy, or a fun fact about your position, and then maybe one other position within AppHarvest.
Okay, let me think about that. So I can go over my position, and then I'll have to kind of noodle on my other response. So one of the fun facts is when I started in late part of last year, I was employee 67. Looks like on my employee ID in my HR system. So number 67, and right now, as we sit mid-April, we're over 500 people organizationally. So that just hopefully gives you some perspective on the rapid expansion that we've gone through and continued growth that we anticipate. So as we alluded to, we'll have Richmond and Berea online here in the very near term, and so we'll be every bit of 1,000 employees here within a year's time or so. So it's pretty cool to see an AgTech specifically focused organization based right here in Central Kentucky. I've done talent acquisition recruiting for a long time here in the area, and there's not a lot of corporate headquartered, people company-wise based here in Lexington. So it's pretty cool to be able to see the expansion and the growth from a corporate side that we've seen organizationally. Fun fact about another position, I'm not sure to think about that. The bees is usually my kind of go-to because that's a lot of fun. People kind of get a kick out of that. Let me think here.
What's maybe one of the most unique positions at AppHarvest, whether it's an office or hands-on, that people may not know about, especially if they're not familiar with AgTech?
Yeah, the IPM role, the specific one that is focused on the pest management, I think is a super unique piece that a lot of people don't associate with agriculture. So, people that are literally going to the farm every day and they're dealing with bees and they're dealing with wasps and they're keeping bad pests out. So that, whether that's, raccoons or rodents or whatever it may be. So I think that's a really unique one. And I think all of the roles, realistically are unique. I think the opportunity for folks to go into the organization and go, 20 feet high on a scissor lift and harvest tomatoes off a hydroponically grown vertical tomato plant is pretty unique.
That's awesome. So kind of along the career ladder, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, but do you have any other advice for someone who is starting a career in general and specifically within the ag tech type of business like AppHarvest?
Yeah, I think in general, I talked a little bit about kind of getting exposed to different areas. And I think that's really important for a lot of people, whether it's within the ag tech space or finance or whatever it is. But my biggest thing is, for me, networking is huge. So, reach out to folks when I tell you to, call me, email me, connect with me on LinkedIn, whatever it may be. I genuinely mean that. And so I have a lot of passion for connecting people to the right, and if I'm not the right contact for that, great, we'll figure it out. But I think people not being afraid to pick up the phone or shoot an email or, stop in somewhere and just network and meet people, I think goes a really long way. You never really know kind of where that'll ultimately end up. And so I think just meeting folks within various sectors or various industries within the ag tech world, specifically as it relates to AppHarvest and different kind of agricultural spaces here and locally, reach out to us, reach out to, the FFA people, the Department of Ag. We have really, really good connections within the community and outreach programs that we run. So odds are if you reach out to somebody within kind of our partner networks, they'll be getting in touch with us. And so if you want to come work here, great. If you want to go work for the Department of Ag or whatever it may be, we can help kind of facilitate those as well. So specifically within the ag tech space, reach out to the community partners in the different areas within your space and certainly can get in contact with other opportunities then.
That's awesome. And just kind of looking towards the future, although I know you guys have already broken ground on 2 additional sites, and I know that you will get those online before you'll probably look any further, but what's kind of the future goals for AppHarvest? Are they looking to have multiple facilities beyond the 2 that you're building, or what is kind of long-term look for the company?
Yeah, so when I refer to long term for AppHarvest, we operate very quickly. So like our long term is like 4 or 5 years. So we have a pretty aggressive growth strategy. By the end of 2025, the anticipation and the goal is that we'll have a dozen operational facilities. So we'll have about 10 to 12 facilities throughout Central Appalachia here in like 4 to 5 years time. So while that's not quite long term, it's a pretty aggressive growth strategy. And part of the reason is when we think about the reason that we're doing what we're doing, addressing food insecurity and creating a sustainable kind of food system within the United States. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not something that can be addressed 20 years from now. It needs to happen as quickly as possible. And so when we think about our kind of competitive advantage, we do things much more efficiently, much more sustainably. Again, the kind of 30 times per acre yield, but we're also doing things at scale. And so you can kind of, at one point, I think the facility in Moorhead was like the 8th largest building in North America. So, it's a massive facility. And so to kind of replicate that as we continue to grow and build additional 60-acre facilities just gives us that much more bandwidth and capacity to be able to address the situation. So while we're going to grow rapidly and really quickly, we're going to do so responsibly and make sure that we're kind of staying true to our mission and values. So future-wise, we'll see what it looks like after that, but that's the goal, is to have 12 of these facilities here in about 4 or 5 years' time.
Well, that's super impressive. Do you guys have any idea of the completion time for the 2 that you've already broken ground on?
Yeah, so it takes, it's certainly the ice storm and weather that we had a few months back certainly does no favors for the construction team, but so it didn't delay it too much. So we should, probably this time next year or, early part of next year, be finalizing things and hopefully get those online before next year. And then we have a growth strategy. I mentioned that the 12 facilities, the plan is to build 3 additional per year, and that'll kind of vary. So we have our first 3 based here in Central Kentucky. And then we're always looking at different opportunities for development and kind of strategizing how we're going to build this, whether that's into, Southeast Ohio, West Virginia, Tennessee. We're going to continue to expand throughout Central Appalachia. And so I think that's pretty exciting as we continue to obviously invest in, Kentucky, but also, look elsewhere within the Appalachian region. So there'll be some additional facilities in the very near term as we continue to grow.
And as you guys continue to grow and you're doing so regionally, are there any abilities or potential for remote work with your company?
Yeah, well, I don't know what that looks like in the future. It's a good question. One of the things, where we are organizationally, like I said earlier, my focus is on kind of corporate talent acquisition and recruiting for our corporate office here. Where we are organization, it makes it a little bit tough just because of the fact that we move so quickly and everything evolves rapidly. So it makes it a little bit tough to be, remote. Certainly we're cognizant of kind of the COVID situation and everything that's going on in the world. So we're flexible and adaptable to that. But it's really, really kind of intrinsic and effective to be able to be boots on the ground and make a day-to-day impact at the local level. So as we continue to grow, certainly there'll be kind of a dispersed workforce to some capacity. So we'll see what that looks like. Right now we just have, Lexington, Moorhead, Richmond, and Berea. So it's a little bit more regional, but we'll kind of see how that looks as we continue to expand.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you guys are very, kind of progressive and are taking things as they go, but also very strategic in what you guys do and are pushing forward really quickly, which is really exciting for your company.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's all the questions that I have right now. I think that you've done a fantastic job answering everything, and we have a much better, at least I have a much better understanding of what AppHarvest is and what your goals are and how you have reached far beyond, your greenhouses, which is really exciting in the programming that you that are facilitating within the region. So that's super exciting. We appreciate you being here. So Harper, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and we really appreciate it, Zach.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zach and AppHarvest and Lori, for that great presentation and discussion. I know I learned a lot today, and I'm sure the students who tuned in and who are going to watch this will also. So thank you all so much, and this was a great session. So thank you, Zach and Lori.
You're very welcome.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. It was fun being here.
Yeah. So a couple of housekeeping things. Our next Workforce Wednesday is going to be next week, April 21st at 10 a.m. with Hallway Feeds in partnership with Horse Country. We also have a couple special events, one coming up today at 2 p.m. Eastern with a maritime panel through Riverworks Discovery. And then tomorrow we launch our education series. So check out our website and social media for more information on those. And thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.